absolute. It works the exact same way in every single cell, in every single human being, whether you're male or female, you're black or white, Republican or Democrat, whether you're Middle Eastern or Saudi Arabian or you're from southern Texas. It is human physiology. And so if we would obey those laws first, we would find our pathway to so many cures for root causes in the human body. And I'm hell-bent on getting that message out. The other thing that I realized, and I just use this as an example, the other thing that we realized in the mortality space was that rarely, if ever, do multiple systems fail in a human being at the same time. You will never convince me that someone has more than one autoimmune disease. You will never convince me that someone has more than one mood disorder or mental illness. Because what happens is multiple systems do not fail at the same time. One domino falls that causes everything. And if you can start standing them back up and find out where that first domino is, you will find the root cause. Yes, they may have been diagnosed with multiple autoimmune. They may have been diagnosed with all kinds of mood and mental illnesses, or mood and mental illnesses and autoimmune and other dysbiotic diagnoses. But you will not be able to show me that all of those systems failed at one time. One domino falls that causes everything. And this happens in so many, and we knew this in the mortality space. If I saw that you had rampantly uncontrolled blood sugar, I will promise you blood sugar is the root of all evil. I'm working on amending the Bible. It's not the love of money, it's blood sugar. That's a joke, especially in this crowd. But we should say the love of money, parentheses, and blood sugar are the root of all evil, because they are the root of all evil. You know, insulin resistance is such a consequential domino in such a myriad of ailments, it's unbelievable. In fact, we would actually tie it to early onset Alzheimer's, dementia, and neurocognitive decline. There are some studies, if you Google it, that Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. It's insulin resistance in the brain. We blame cholesterol for its oxidative process, which happens from high insulin. Right? Cholesterol itself, in fact, no one in this room could give me any shred of evidence anywhere in the published peer-reviewed clinical literature that links elevated LDL cholesterol on its own to cardiovascular disease. Yet, if your LDL cholesterol is even slightly elevated, we're going to put you on a statin. What we didn't look at, that we saw in the mortality space, was this molecule, which is manufactured by the liver. Only about 15% of it comes from diet, but about 85% of this nasty compound, LDL cholesterol, is in your blood, is manufactured by the liver. But it's not a fuel source, so what does the body use it for? It's a construction material. We use it to build every cell wall, every cell membrane. We make hormones from cholesterol. We make vitamin D3, cholecalciferol, the only vitamin that human beings make on our own. How important do you think vitamin D is to human beings if God only gave us the ability to make one vitamin? We don't need to eat, we don't need to breathe, we don't need to drink. All we need to do is expose our skin to sunlight and have cholesterol in our blood, and we make vitamin D3. How important do you think that is to human function? In fact, the second leading cause of morbidity in COVID was a clinical deficiency in vitamin D3. Leading risk factor was morbid obesity and type 2 diabetes, and the second was clinical deficiency in vitamin D3. And so when we start to rewind a lot of these myths, you know, we built $1 trillion industry on keeping LDL cholesterol below 99, when the truth is, in 22 years in the mortality space, we didn't process a single death claim on a centenarian, someone over the age of 100, that did not have clinically elevated levels of LDL cholesterol at the time of their death, right? Cholesterol is not the answer. Oxidized cholesterol and some of the other lipoproteins are the villain. If you had low triglycerides and high LDL cholesterol, we would extend your life expectancy. Why? Because that's what the data said. And sometimes we have to apply common sense and mass data to what we do in medicine and how we treat human beings. In fact, if you apply large data studies, and this is about to happen at scale because of artificial intelligence and big data. If you look at diet or exercise, and you start looking at what are all the big meta-analyses and the big data studies and all the blue zone studies, where do all of them line up? Well, they will tell you that there's no argument for dogmatic dieting. The secret to extending your life is not carnivore, paleo, pescatarian, vegan, vegetarian, raw food. The secret to extending your life is the absence of processed food. Full stop. Right? Oh, thank you. Bill, I love this audience. Usually by now I've chopped the audience right in half. Yeah, they said don't talk about politics, don't talk about science, don't talk about religion. We talked about Jesus a little bit, or we haven't talked about politics. We'll get into that. Well, now I'll just stick to biology. But the secret to the right diet is the absence of processed foods, because you can take any region in the world. You can go to Sardinia, highest carbohydrate consumption in the world, one of the longest life expectancies. But in Singapore, it's the highest meat consumption per capita, very long life expectancy. You go to the Mediterranean, very high in fatty fish and fatty oils. Almost a liter of olive oil per person per week. If you told your cardiologist like that, their head would explode. Very long life expectancies. And then the French, the heck with the French, because they screwed up the whole model because they're smoking cigarettes, drinking wine, eating cheese, living to 100, right? The secret to a long life is the absence of processed food. What no one rarely talks about, if ever, is the need for community and connection and faith. And thank you. Because we just don't think about faith as medicine and community as medicine and connection as medicine. But I talked about this a little last night. We knew in the mortality space that if you wanted to cut a human being's life expectancy in half, and I mean in half, at any age, you put them in isolation. Isolation is the most detrimental thing to our physiology. If you have faith, you're never isolated. If you have good, deep familial connections, you are not isolated. Human beings were meant to do what we're doing right now, be in the proximity of other human beings. That's why I like these events, because there's no replacement for community and for connection. You know, we know this because every one of us has known a relative that has, or a friend's relative that's died of broken heart syndrome, right? I mean, a couple that's married 40, 50, 60 years, one spouse passes, what happens to the other spouse? It's usually very quickly. And why is that? That's the first time that that person has been in isolation in maybe half a century. They were just immediately isolated. When you look at some of the most horrific crimes that you see all over the news, who were they committed by? Oh, the loner, the kid that's in isolation, that didn't come out of his bedroom, that didn't have a friend group. So community, connection, faith, these are medicine. And so, you know, the answers are sometimes a lot more simple than what we think. The reason why I showed this chart was just to show some of the consequences of insulin resistance, because in modern medicine, we chase all of these spokes of the wheel and not the actual hub. I did want to, before I opened it to questions, I wanted to talk about molecular hydrogen, just shift gears here for a second. Probably the world's leading PhD in molecular hydrogen is sitting right there, Dr. Tyler LeBaron. So I'm not going to do it justice. I believe in the supplement and nutritional space, the discovery of the role of hydrogen gas in the human body, not the discovery of hydrogen gas, it's the lightest, most prevalent element in the universe. The role that it plays in human physiology as a supplemental treatment, in my opinion, is the greatest discovery of our millennia. Because we know that, well, hydrogen is about 10% of your body weight is hydrogen. We know that this gas is harmless to human beings. But what we're discovering now, and it is well reviewed in the literature, Dr. LeBaron has published a lot of this research, you know, so much so that hydrogen is a part of something that I do every single day. But hydrogen gas has some very, very unique properties when you put it into the human body. First of all, it acts as a selective antioxidant. Vitamin C and blueberries and elderberry and quercetin are all great antioxidants, but they're not selective. What does that mean? Well, we know that oxidative stress and free radical oxidation and inflammation, you know, these have consequences in the human body. They degrade cell membranes, They impair the healing process, they disrupt the immune system. But the challenge is knowing if you have oxidative stress, how much antioxidant do you take so that you don't over suppress oxidation? That can be just as dangerous as having too much oxidative stress. So for you science nerds in here, like me, what we want in the human body is something called redox homeostasis. We want a balance between oxidation and reduction, between inflammation and too much inflammation. If not, the body doesn't heal the way that it should. If you're walking down the street and you step off the curb and twist your right ankle, how does the body know to heal the right ankle and leave the left ankle alone? It's the inflammatory process, right? The fibroblastic signaling, the inflammatory process. This is why peptides are so good. Without that process, we wouldn't be able to heal. Hydrogen, when it enters the cell, it enters through a unique pathway called the NRF2 pathway. When it enters this pathway, what it does is it restores, it brings oxidative stress to neutrality and stops. It can also increase oxidation if needed. Because there's a lot of things that have dual roles in the human body, like superoxide. Not having it is detrimental, having too much is detrimental. Hydrogen peroxide, not having it is detrimental, having too much is detrimental. With the exception of something called a hydroxyl radical, which I don't think has any known benefit in the human body. So hydrogen gas will neutralize the hydroxyl free radical and restore the other free radicals to neutrality. It is very inexpensive. You can drink it, you can bathe in it, you can breathe it. Every single one of you, I'm going to give you molecular hydrogen tablets before you leave. I brought thousands of them. You just drop them in your water. It's elemental magnesium. It becomes hydrogen gas. You drink the hydrogen gas. You tell me how you feel. It is not a stimulant. It helps to reduce inflammation and turn the lights on. So I'm not going to bore you to tears with all of the clinical studies. This one I found fascinating because most of the time when they do research on supplementation and sports rehabilitative research, they do it on young, healthy individuals. This was actually a study that was published in the Journal of Experimental Gerontology. I found this because I am going through this issue with my parents right now. I have one parent whose body is failing and his mind is very sharp, and I have another parent whose body is very strong and her mind is failing. And I can tell you that in both cases, hydrogen gas has been a material part of their recovery. I'm documenting this right now, and I'm going to publish it on Instagram. Everything from the brain scan studies to the gold standard memory test that I did on my mother, and I'm going to show you how in 21 weeks, I can take an 82-year-old, forgotten, disoriented female and bring her back to the kind of sharp acuity that she had in her 40s. It's already starting to happen. My dad is already telling me she's driving him crazy. At first, she was asking him the same question all the time, and now she wants to redecorate the whole house and change all the carpets and switch out the artwork. And he's like, hey, can you just dial her back a little bit? I'm like, Dad, it's one or the other. You know, either she mumbles like an idiot and asks you the same question every 15 minutes, or she's redecorating the house. But there's no like 6 or 7. It's a 10 or a 1. You choose. Again, I won't bore you with all of the research. I'll talk to you about it at the booth. That's the product that I take. It's just called H2 Tab. It is a molecular hydrogen tablet. I drop it every morning into water, and I drink the gas from that. I also spend a lot of time on airplanes, and that will mitigate all of the effects of travel. Low barometric pressure, high static electricity, high radiation, dry air, what have you. This is probably the most common question I get asked. What's your morning routine? So there it is. If you want to just take a picture of it, it's pretty simple. It's exactly what I did this morning. What's amazing is, you know, I find that things that are free, like touching the surface of the earth, getting sunlight onto your skin, and learning to do a round of breath work, they are so simple, they're free, they're so accessible, and they're portable. People do not give them the credence that it deserves. When I regularly hold sleep challenges. Have any of you ever done one of my sleep challenges? A couple of you? 2 of you? I'm doing really good in this room. This is awesome. 3, great. Okay. Could you raise your hands out of sympathy for me so I'm not embarrassed? Thank you. Another honest dude. These are, we're circadian creatures. Our bodies crave routine. We actually have a biological cycle in our body. We have an area of our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, very complicated name, very simple task. What it does is it regulates the secretion of hormones. It regulates our digestion. And if we don't have any normalcy that our body can tie into, then this whole system gets dysregulated. One of the best things you can do to have a good night's sleep tomorrow is get sunlight in your eyes this morning. Very simple. Allow sunlight to, touch your skin. We have to stop being afraid of the sun. We've been taught to fear the sun. The truth is most of us are not getting enough sunlight, we're getting too much sunlight. You know what's fascinating to me? 23 brands of sunscreen have been pulled from the market since 2018 for directly or indirectly causing skin cancer. And I used to have a chart that I would give at my stage talks showing the parabolic rise in skin cancer since the late 1980s, and it's superimposable with the parabolic use of sunscreen. Sun's not our enemy. It's okay to spend a few minutes in sunlight in the morning, naturally into your eyes to reset your circadian rhythm. I do a style of breath work called Wim Hof. There are hundreds of valid styles of breath work. I'm by no means saying that that's the best one. I do 3 rounds of 30 breaths, obnoxiously deep breaths, followed by exhaling through a straw. And at the end of each round of 30 breaths, I hold my breath as long as I can, allow CO2 to build up in my bloodstream, dilate my blood vessels, and I do it again. They are free, they are portable, and they tell your body what time it is. It's time to go to bed, it's time to wake up. So a very common thing that happens after I leave stage talks is people want to get in touch with me, they want to ask me questions. I'm really, really proud of this. I spent the last 2.5 years building an artificial intelligence app that I have never once let crawl the web. I have fed it every stage talk, podcast, lecture, interview. It's read every book I've ever written. It's read all of the white papers. I selectively will feed it research if I think that it is valid and it's done on human beings and it doesn't have a bias. You can ask it anything. It's like having me in your pocket. You could ask it about supplements, your blood work. It will read your genetic testing. It will read your labs. It will give you responses to your autoimmune disease. It will actually tell you how much hydration or minerals you need. So if you want to join the VIP community, I would love to have you. Are there any of my VIPs in here right now? Right there? Can I just tell a few stories since I have some witnesses in the room? Saying you're welcome to talk to these people. They're part of my VIP community. Since you've been a part of my VIP community, have you seen people heal from any pathologies or disease? Yeah, we have people come on all the time that have autoimmune Hashimoto's. And what I'll do is I'll spotlight them and I'll bring them up onto an artificial stage and they'll let me be transparent with their medical records and their treatments in front of, there's tens of thousands, there's actually almost 10,000 members in this VIP community. And right in front of everyone over the course of 10 to 12 weeks, we will permanently put that condition into remission. And they will come on every month and talk about their journey. And it's just so inspiring. Talk to one, I did not know they were here. I didn't plant these people in the audience. Just talk to them about the journeys that happen in this VIP group. Because I am trying to build a community of like-minded people like you to go change the world. And we're gonna do it from the bottom up, not the top down. So thank you. All right. I have a few minutes to get to questions. I can't understand this clock. Do I have 15 minutes and 45 seconds left, or have I talked 15 minutes too long?
Yeah, so we're like right probably at ending, but let's take just a couple of questions real quick. So raise your hand and
yes,
we'll walk to you.
Since you sprung out of your seat and
That's my mom for you.
Knock the woman over next to her.
What about Addison's disease? I have a son that's 48. He was diagnosed at 13. And when he was diagnosed, I asked the doctor, well, is there anything you can do to rebuild his adrenals? And they go, no.
And what
for 35 years, he's been on levothyroxine, Synthroid, and Florinef.
Okay, so let's talk about Addison's disease. I also want to talk about Graves' disease and Hashimoto's at the same time, just all things thyroid for a moment. So really quickly, how many of you either have or know somebody that has hypothyroid? Holy cow. Okay, so when you're diagnosed with hypothyroid, you're usually diagnosed with hypothyroid because you have low T3 hormone. Can you just write that down if you have hypothyroid? You have low T3. That is the vast majority of hypothyroid is low T3 hormone. So the thyroid sits right here in your neck, and it produces these two hormones, T4 and T3. If T3 gets low, that's called hypothyroid. Only the little known fact about the thyroid is it only produces 20% of the T3 in your blood. Which means if your T3 is low, there's an 80% chance it's not the thyroid. Yet in 100% of the cases, we medicate the thyroid for a crime it's not committing. So the question is, where does the other 80% of the T3 come from? Does anyone know? Okay. It is methylated from T4 into T3, and that happens in the liver. So 80% of your thyroid hormone is not coming from your thyroid, your T3 hormone, it is coming from your liver. Yes, some, for you guys that are science nerds, a very small amount in the periphery and some in the gut. But the vast majority of that is coming from the liver. We methylate T4 into T3. In order to convert T4 into T3, you need several nutrients, one of which is iodine. Most people are not iodine deficient. But one of the critical nutrients, and this deficiency runs in families, this deficiency is genetically inherited, not hypothyroid. You inherit a selenium conversion deficiency. Selenium is a nutrient converted into something called selenomethionine. And that enters the liver and helps this process, this conversion process. Selenomethionine and selenocysteine helps this conversion process. If you have a gene mutation that causes poor conversion of that raw material into the material your body needs, you have a deficiency. That deficiency impairs the conversion of T4 into T3, making T3 low. And you're diagnosed with hypothyroid, and then we medicate the thyroid for a crime it's not committing. So I would really investigate a deficiency in selenium or selenomethionine, because the absence of those methylated nutrients are the catalyst the liver needs to deiodinize thyroid hormone T4, what's called outer ring to inner ring thyroid deiodinization. And so without boring you to complete tears, the nutrient deficiency is inherited, the disease is not. There is no gene for hypothyroid. It runs in families. You got it from your ancestor, but you didn't inherit the disease. The second thing is, and this is true with autoimmune, can somebody take the top off of one of those water bottles? Can I have the top off that one? Thank you. All right. So with Addison's, Hashimoto's, I'm gonna teach you what most endocrinologists don't know about autoimmune disease here in 90 seconds. If this was a mold spore, a mycotoxin, a parasite, a virus, or a heavy metal, this thing right here, and this was a healthy cell, this does not hide like this. It hides like this. That is the most important distinction I can make. Mold, mycotoxin, parasite, virus, heavy metal. Healthy cell hides like this. Now, the immune system is hypervigilant. It wants to get to the perpetrator. Just like if somebody robbed the bank across the street and ran in this room and barricaded themselves in this room, the police would bust down that door to get to the perpetrator. They're not trying to break the door, they're trying to get to the perpetrator. The immune system is after the villain. And the villain is hiding very often intracellularly inside of your cell. Do you know what happens when the immune system reaches the door? How does it bust down the door? It manufactures an antibody. It's manufacturing an antibody to a cell that's containing a villain, not randomly manufacturing antibodies to your own tissue. It is after the perpetrator. And we hold the immune system responsible and say the immune system has gone haywire. You know, in the vast majority of Hashimoto's patients that we have put into remission, and yes, we put them into remission because my VIPs have seen that in real time in my VIP group. It is because of toxic heavy metals embedded in the thyroid. The thyroid has an affinity for heavy metals. Mercury, arsenic, palladium, lead have an affinity for the thyroid. When they migrate to the thyroid, the immune system shows up at that location and it wages war. And instead of actually helping them rid the toxin, we actually go after the immune system. I will promise you this, if you have an autoimmune disease, I'm not saying this is the source of all autoimmune disease, but if you or a loved one has an autoimmune disease right now, these are the 5 major villains you need to look for. Mold, mycotoxin, parasite, virus, heavy metal. If you just hit those categories and got them out of the body, this is called subtractive medicine, you would very often see the immune system completely calm down. Because you don't have an autoimmune disease, you have a pathological infection. And so we just think these incidences are random. The immune system just doesn't show up places and bust it. If no bank robber ran in here, the police would never bust down that door. Right? If your house didn't catch fire, the firemen would never show up. They don't just randomly stop by with a hose, right? Something called them to that location. We should always ask ourselves, you know, the first, in our mind, when you have one of these conditions, an autoimmune condition, the first thing is, hey guys, God didn't make a mistake. I don't think he made a mistake. I think the immune system is acting properly. We just have to find out why it's here. Instead of immediately getting off on the other fork, immune system's made a mistake, and now we're down this bandwagon of autoimmune. Instead of saying, what could have called it to this location? Why did it show up? We do the same thing with cholesterol. Cholesterol just doesn't jump out of the bloodstream, stick to the blood vessel, right? And stick to the arterial wall, to the endothelium. Something called it to the endothelium, usually inflammation and damage or oxidation. So, and I'll be happy to talk to you about what supplements I might recommend as soon as I get off the stage. One more question maybe, because I'm over my time. Yes, ma'am. 2025, you went through a cancer journey and it's left you. Okay, so she went on a cancer journey. It clearly was a successful journey, so God bless you for that. And now post recovery, you have neuropathy. So, you know, here are my feelings on neuropathy. So first, what is neuropathy? Generally, it is poor circulation in proximity to the nerve. So if I wanted to give anyone in this room peripheral neuropathy right now, I would just put a tourniquet on your forearm. In 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you would have peripheral neuropathy in these fingers, right? In about 10 minutes, I could pinch the top of your hand as hard as I could and you wouldn't even feel it. The most important point is nothing is wrong with those nerves. What would happen when I took the tourniquet off? All that feeling would come back, right? So peripheral neuropathy very often and neuropathic disorders are not pathology of the nerve. They are pathology of the circulatory system. Remember I said that the heart doesn't circulate 70% of our blood? That vasomotor circulation is happening in the microvasculature. Some of these vessels are a fraction of the size of a human hair. Under a microscope, red blood cells are literally leaping over each other and leaping back from the tissue. Very, very small vasculature. This is why biologics very often don't work in neuropathic patients. The molecular size is too big to get to the target tissue. In medicine and in inflammation and in biologics and tissue biologics, proximity doesn't matter. If you're having a heart attack on the floor and the paramedics are locked right outside your door, does it matter that they got really, really close to you? Okay, so we have to obey certain laws of physiology. These are circulatory. So I would be focusing on how do I improve microvascular circulation? So if we identify the villain as circulation, vasomotor, microvascular, what can I do for that? Red light therapy is probably the single biggest and best intervention that you can do. The reason why is because certain wavelengths of red light will literally pass through the skin and pass through the arterial walls. Without getting too complicated, it dissociates a gas called mitochondrial nitric oxide, which causes a vasodilation and hammers oxygen into the mitochondria. It kickstarts the mitochondria. The second is I would be taking a form of resveratrol called Picied, P-I-C-I-E-D, resveratrol, I take one called Vinia, but there are lots of great brands out there. I have no association with them, but I take Vinia resveratrol. And the third thing I would be doing is I would be taking a vascular endothelial repair supplement, something like Endocalyx or Revasca, to actually repair and heal the endothelium of that microvascular. You restore the circulation, you restore the nerve function. Most neurological decline in the brain is due to poor circulation from trapped inflammatory compounds, trapped histamines. Like the big fallacy in a lot of these neurological disorders, Alzheimer's, dementia, early onset cognitive decline, is that these patients are losing their memory. That is not true. Alzheimer's patients are not losing their memory. They are losing access to their memory. And access can be restored. So it can be restored in your case too. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I hope that you got value out of this. God bless you. I really, really appreciate it. I will be back. Thank you.
I think a lot of people relate aesthetic health to metabolic health. You can go years and years and have chronic disease even though you look good in the mirror.
You talk about how the